Hello everyone, Christina Werner here. Welcome to another video at my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how I created these 4 cards using a floral layering stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. This is actually a stamp set that's included in a limited edition card kit. This is the Fresh Air Flowers card kit, and it's essentially kind of like a Mother's Day card kit, but the stamps live beyond Mother's Day. So I'm going to be creating these 4 cards, and none of them actually say mother or mom on them. So they could be used for a bunch of other things. I just want to give you a glimpse of what else is included in this kit. It is jam packed with so much stuff, including the stamp set that I mentioned. And there's also a special die that was designed for this kit. There's a couple dies actually, and a stencil set and pattern papers, just so many different things. So let's take a look at the stamp set. This is a layering floral stamp set. So you've got multiple stamps for each image, and they're labeled all with a letter and a number. So we've got A, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then for the leaves, 5, 6. Here are the 4 colors of ink I've chosen for this large flower. I'm starting with the color Heather from Simon Says Stamp. Now, Simon sells a bunch of their inks, especially the positively saturated inks. They do sell them in sets. They were designed with a light, medium, and dark shade for each kind of color group. So, this is the color group that kind of has this bluish purple. And so I picked out those 3 shades, and then I needed a 4th. So I picked an even darker color. So as I stamp this, I'm just using an acrylic block since it was really easy to move it around and stamp it multiple times. And I'm going to be eventually cutting out that pocket with the die from the kit, and it's going to be covering the center of the card. So I thought, you know what, I'll just stamp around the outer edge in a U shape. So that's why I started up in that corner, put the stem and leaves in so I'd know how far away to stamp the bottom flower, and then worked my way around. And this was a great way to get the spacing just right. So the next color I used for the purple flower is the color violet. And then I brought in the color iris. So these are the 3 purple shades that are kind of sold together: Heather, violet, and iris. But I needed a 4th color. So I'm actually going to bring in Galaxy, which is more of a bluish shade, but it's a really, really dark, intense color. So it's perfect for the center of these flowers. And this is the same color combo of purples I'll be using later on my other 2 cards. For the second color on the leaves, because there are 2 steps for the leaves, I used sage as the lighter green and pine as the darker green. So I wanted to have that pocket cut out of the same color of purple as the flowers. So I decided to create my own cardstock using the color violet, and I just ink blended that on. You could also go straight to the paper with your ink pad if you want and kind of swipe it across, but I just use a blending brush for that. And then I ran it through my die cutting machine. It looks a little splotchy now, but you'll see in the finished card photos how this ink really settles into the paper and evens out. So I have my pocket, and I'm stamping onto the pocket the greeting for my card. It says, "For someone amazing." So I made sure all of that ink on the cardstock was completely dry. I used a powder tool, and then I stamped my greeting in Versamark ink and applied some gold embossing powder. As far as the pocket goes, I used this roll of terrific tape. This is 1/8 inch tape that's included in the kit. And I put that on the flaps of the pocket. And then I'm going to be adhering it down to the center of the card design. Starting from the bottom and kind of adhering that bottom flap first. And then I've got some twine that I've put behind the pocket, and I'm going to press down those 2 sides while holding the twine right there. You can still move the twine around just a little bit, but I mostly just wanted to have that already on the pocket so that I could tie it into a bow. So I tied the twine into a bow and I trimmed off the tails of the bow. And then I have a gift card that can go right inside the little pocket. It's perfectly sized for a gift card. So here's a photo of the finished card. You can see how that ink really evened out over that pocket, and it perfectly matches the flowers that are already on the card. So here we are. Let's go on to the second card. This one comes together really quickly. I wanted to have the bottom kind of half of the card a different color, but I wanted to have a little swoopy line. So I'm using some masking paper, and I've sketched on a line and then cut it out and applied that masking paper to the top portion of my card. I'm going to be taking Twirling Tutu ink from Simon, and I'm going to ink blend it on with a blending brush, similar to what I did for the pocket, just trying to get a nice solid amount of ink, and it will even out over time as it dries. I'll peel back that masking paper, and you can see it leaves this really nice line right across, and it's really defined. I think it looks really, really neat. So now I'm going to do some stamping. I'm going to stamp that same flower that I did before, but in different colors. The largest area of the flower, I'm starting with the color ink called Fog, followed by Duckling. I'm going to be doing this flower in whites and yellows. And I just stamped it off to the side to make sure that there wasn't any remaining purple ink on the stamp. It was perfectly fine. I cleaned it really well. So then I stamped that first yellow color Duckling. The next color I used is Sunshine. I'll put that right in the center. And then I'm going to finish off the little dots in the center with the color Cobblestone. I decided to not go for an even darker orange or yellow, but just go straight to brown. Using the same green color for the stem and leaves as I did before. So this is the color Sage. And instead of just having, two leaves, I decided to stamp it twice, line up that stem, and then I'll have four leaves. And that just extends the entire image of the flower. Using the color Pine for the darker stamping on the leaves. And then the flower is pretty much done and stamped. I'm going to move on to the greeting. I'm using the color Smoke from Simon Says Stamp to stamp my greeting. And I've moved to my Misty tool for stamping of the greeting because I wanted to make sure that it was stamped really well. And if I didn't stamp it very well the first time, when you're using a Misty, you can stamp it a second time and it kind of corrects any errors. So here is that card. This is essentially a one-layer card, although I did trim it down just a little bit and then mount it onto my card base using some foam adhesive. So for my third and fourth cards, I'm actually going to be stamping a pattern of all of the flowers and all the layered images. And I wanted them to really nestle in close to each other. So instead of just going for this kind of free for all, I wanted to make sure that none of the images would overlap. So I'm kind of creating some guides for me. I'm stamping each one of these four groups of flowers and leaves, and I just basically want the outer shape. So I'm just using the first layer for each image plus the leaves. And then I've cut them out using my scissors, and I'm going to be using these as guides while I stamp the pattern on my cardstock. Now, I knew this is going to be time consuming. And so just to like maximize how many cards I could get out of this, really long stamping session, I decided to mount my 5x7 card base on a sticky mat. And then I put another sticky mat on top. This is a clear one from Misty or My Sweet Petunia. And then I just mounted some pink cardstock over the same position on my sticky mat. So now I can stamp two patterns at the same time, placing my guide for the large flower right in the center of my 5x7 cardstock. And I'm going to start stamping. So I'm using the same colors that I did on my very first card. So for the purple flowers, I'm starting with the color Heather. And then I'm going to take out that sticky mat and replace it with the pink one. And then I'll just stamp this in the exact same spot. Now, I think you could maximize this even more if you have additional sticky mats and do, 4 or 5 different colored cardstocks and really maximize the amount of, usable patterned cardstock that you get in the end. But I decided to just do 2. I'm using some Nina Desert Storm Environmental cardstock or a craft shade. And then for the pink cardstock, I'm actually using Concord and Ninth Ballet Slipper cardstock. So for this other purple set of flowers, I started with the color Lilac. And once we get into the different colors of ink that I'm putting on top, I'll go ahead and put all the colors on screen. I will speed this up here in a bit, but I did want to show you how I kind of use the guides that I created earlier to help me position all of these flowers to make sure they're in the right spot and also just to maximize the amount of color that I'm getting all the way across both pieces of cardstock. For the very small center areas on a few of the flowers, I decided to just use an acrylic block and fill in those areas. It just seemed to go a little bit faster. And then when it came to removing them from the mat, I bent back the mat and the cardstock came off without any problems. My hands were covered in ink, and it wasn't even from the stamping or anything. I think it was from picking up my stamp chamois to clean the stamps. But washed my hands really well and the ink came off. It wasn't a huge deal. But my hands were stained for a few hours after because I just had so much ink. I used some Hero Arts pitch black cardstock to create one greeting for a card, and I just stamped and heat embossed that in white embossing powder. And then I used the nested round hearts set and used the largest size to cut out a heart from the pink background. Just wanted a lot of color on that heart, so I kind of moved it around and positioned it to where I wanted it. And for the heart card, I had the same issue that I had with the pocket card. I wanted the same color of cardstock to match. So I used the amethyst ink and I swished that onto a little bit of that ballet slipper cardstock from Concord and Ninth. I prepped the area with an anti-static powder tool after letting the ink dry, of course, and then stamped my greeting in Versamark ink. I applied some gilded embossing powder, or this is a gold embossing powder from Brutus Monroe, and then I'm going to hit that with a heat tool until it's smooth and melted. And I noticed that as I added the heat to my cardstock, that it really altered the color of the cardstock. I'm not sure why that happened. So just to get the color back, I decided to ink blend some of that amethyst color over the top again. And the gold embossing powder is a slick, shiny surface and it repels the ink. So all I had to do was wipe it off with a rag and it took off all that extra ink. I then used the second to smallest circle from Simon's Nested Circles die set to cut out this greeting. And this is going to actually go in the center of my heart on my final card. Okay, let's assemble card number 3. So I'm putting it onto a white card base. I'm just using some Tombow Extreme adhesive. I want this entire pattern to show on my final card. So I don't want to cover it up with a lot of stuff, but I did want to have a little bit of a special edge on that greeting. So I'm using the scallop stitches, one of the little dies, and I ran it through my die cutting machine and it cut off a little scalloped edge with a little stitch. And then I can put that onto some foam adhesive and put that directly onto my card front. To finish off this card, I took some white embroidery floss and opened up the card and wrapped it around the front of the card and then tied a bow right up at the top. Trimmed off the tails of the string, and then here's the finished card. I love how this one turned out. It really lets all of that stamping shine and be the focal point of the card. For the last card, I've got that cut out heart as well as the greeting. And I really loved that yellow shade. I wanted to have more yellow. So I used that same kind of scalloped edge that I used on the previous greeting. And I cut out some masking paper. And I'm going to mask off the top area so that I can just ink blend the bottom of the card. I placed that heart right on my card design just so I could get the right placement. And then I put that masking tape down, or I should say masking paper. I used the color Duckling, which is the same paler yellow shade I used for my flowers, and I ink blended that on. And you'll notice how splotchy that looks right now. Just remember in your mind, that looks so splotchy right now. And then on the final card, after the ink had time to dry, it really evened out and smoothed out, and it looks beautiful. Put some foam adhesive behind the heart, as well as behind the circle greeting. And that finishes up my 4th card. So here's a picture of that card. Look how smooth that yellow ink looks. I think it just looks perfect and it turned out so well. So here are all 4 cards all finished. I love how these turned out. I love that they're so colorful and ready for spring. I think they turned out beautifully. You can get this stamp set in that limited edition card kit or on its own. So I would really recommend, if you love layering floral stamps like this, to go ahead and pick that up while you can. Thanks so much for watching today. I will catch you guys in another video very soon.